With his new film Megalopolis releasing this year, I decided to finally dive headfirst into the filmography of Francis Ford Coppola, starting with the one that I really wanted to see the most, Apocalypse Now. So, let's talk about it. So, high level, this film is based in the Vietnam War, following Martin Sheen, who plays a character named Willard, who is assigned a mission to hunt and track down this colonel, played by Marlon Brando, named Kurtz. We don't know too many details about Kurtz. We don't really know exactly what he's done. He's been charged for murder, which is kind of ironic seeing as they're in the middle of a war. And we slowly get drip-fed information throughout the course of the film, and as we learn more about him, we start to have these questions about why is it he is the one that's being targeted here? I'm going to be honest, I was very intimidated to really dive into Francis Ford Coppola's films. I know how critically acclaimed they are, how they're held to a certain regard, and honestly, I didn't think that I would enjoy many of his films. However, Apocalypse Now just completely shred that doubt from my mind because this film is spectacular, holds up incredibly well. I cannot believe that this film released in the 70s. It's just crazy when you watch this film. It could hold up today as a modern day picture. I saw the final cut of this, so I'm going to go into what that adds into the film if you don't know, and talk about kind of my issues with this film at points, because I do have a couple of small criticisms, even though I came out of this really enjoying this and being blown away by what this presented and the ideologies that Francis Ford Coppola tackled within this film. There's just a real sense of intention behind this film. You know exactly what Coppola is trying to achieve here, and it feels different from most films that are set during this period. Usually these films are about the brutality of war and how war is hell. And yes, while that is true, it has been done to death in films, and I'm kind of getting tired of it. So I thought Apocalypse Now would be more of that. It's not. It more goes into the things that a man can do when put in these circumstances, and how they're so quick to disregard any empathy or feelings when they're put into these situations. And I thought that was a fascinating ideology to really dive headfirst into. And I thought Coppola handled that brilliantly throughout the film. And it's really showcased between two of the most major supporting characters in this film. The first of which is Kilgore, played by Robert Duvall in an Academy Award nominated performance here. And I think it was well deserved. He's only in this film for about 12 minutes and he is impactful. He is in probably my favorite scene of the entire film. Many iconic moments from this film occur with this character. He has such a sense of coldness, but in a way this fake kind of warmth and empathy, but you can tell under the surface that he doesn't really care about the people that he's killing. He almost gets off and feels invincible in this war. It feels like this is a period of time that he was made for. And some of the decisions that this character makes are just so fascinating, and once again dive into these ideologies. For example, they're willing to go full gung-ho and blow up this village in Vietnam full of children and parents, so many people, just because it's a good surfing spot. Moments like that are just incredible within the film. It's so devastating. And the way that Coppola films these scenes, absolutely brilliant. This is where the Ride of the Valkyrie song plays, and you get the iconic line from Robert Duvall.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
Absolutely incredible performance here, and I really was blown away by that sequence. And then you have these insane practical effects where they're just blowing so much shit up, and it would make Michael Bay blush. I mean, it's so practical and so effective. I really loved it, and it's what made the film really age so well. I heard that Francis Ford Coppola almost went into financial ruin trying to make this movie, and that kind of makes sense with how expensive this film looks. This stuff just wouldn't get made like this that often today, and it doesn't. But what Coppola does here just makes this film feel so timeless. Now, while Duvall is definitely probably my favorite performance in the film, I really have to credit Martin Sheen's Willard here. I thought his performance was fantastic. He's very quiet in this role. He doesn't speak all that much, but he communicates so much through his facial expressions. He's such a compelling character that he can take you through this 3-hour film seamlessly. He just works so well with what Coppola is trying to do here. I really, really appreciated this character. He has a lot of depth. He has a lot of trauma that he's facing. And you see what he's willing to do to get this mission done. Very, very intriguing, the way that this approaches such subject matter and the way that this character evolves over the course of this film. It's another really interesting sequence that really just shows off the grandeur of this film and the scope of it. The way that Francis Ford Coppola stylizes this movie is very interesting too and makes it feel of the time. For example, the Playboy sequence in this was a very, very interesting aspect of this film and kind of builds off Robert Duvall's character and the ideology that he had, where putting these characters and these veterans in a situation where they're reminded of their home might make things more painful, when in actuality what he may be intending to do is to try to ease the pain from being in such a hellish scenario. And I think the Playboy sequence kind of builds off that in a very interesting way, and the way that it is stylized looks brilliant. And I need to talk about some of these technical elements because I think technically this thing is as close to perfect as you can get. The score is phenomenal, really puts you into this world. Some of the needle drops and the tracks that Coppola plays feel so fitting and just of the time. It just works perfectly within this film. And then, of course, the cinematography. This is one of the most beautiful looking films that I have ever seen. Some really profound lighting choices that really, really worked. And then just iconic shots in this film that are so recognizable that I knew of before I even saw the film. But when you watch it within the context of the narrative, it just works so much and you can understand why these shots are just so iconic. Now, this is where I want to start talking about some flaws, and I realized later on that these are caused from the final cut. There's an additional half an hour of sequences in the final cut from the theatrical, and I wanted to watch the final cut first because I kind of thought it would be like a Blade Runner situation where the final cut is really the definitive version of the movie, and you wouldn't really want to watch any other version of this movie and have that tarnished. Apocalypse Now, that isn't really the case. A lot of people think that the theatrical cut is the best version of the film because it cuts the fat, and the redux and the final cut are kind of there if you really, really enjoy Apocalypse Now and just want to see a little bit more. As a first-time viewer of this film through the final cut, I think that it takes away from a lot of the key messaging of the film at points and bogs the pacing down a lot in these sequences. The first of which is at the French plantation. This sequence just feels so out of place, and what it's talking about doesn't really seem to fit in very well with the movie, while it does commentate on Vietnam and the effects of that, and definitely has a purpose. It has a message, but the messaging is not consistent with the rest of the film and what it's trying to communicate to me. So I feel like that it's really out of place, and to me, I just found those moments really slow. They didn't really give me any more to Willard or any of the other characters that I didn't already know. So to me, I would have been happy with this being left on the cutting room floor. A lot of the sequences with Kurtz are also added. Now, we're building up to this meeting with Kurtz. Marlon Brando, I know, is an actor that is held in such high regard. It's considered to be one of the greatest. He's your favorite actor's favorite actor. And so I was really, really excited for this moment. And I felt a little bit let down. And after learning a little bit about how this film was made and how he approached this performance, as well as what the character is trying to do, I didn't find that it worked as well as I really hoped it to. At points, and this is an issue with the final cut, is that he just rambles on and on and on. And we kind of get the point, but he just keeps going on and on and on, and it kind of loses a lot of interest, and it takes a little bit for it to pick up some steam again as we start focusing on the main mission of this film again. I really, really wanted a little bit more out of this character than what we got. Francis Ford Coppola made some very interesting choices with this character that I actually liked, such as the lighting decision to really hide this character's face a little bit, make him feel a little bit more mysterious. And Marlon Brando definitely is committing to the bit. However, from what I hear from when they made this film, he seemed like a real diva on set. He was supposed to be in shape for this role. He turned up overweight. He wasn't really willing to shave his head until a big fight with Coppola happened. It just seemed like he was being so difficult in this process. And I don't know why, because Coppola was really crafting something brilliant. And I know that he might not have thought that at the time. I know he had doubts when making this film. But you have to listen to a director like this. Francis Ford Coppola, at this point, had done a lot. He'd worked with Brando before on The Godfather, so I don't know what the doubts were. I don't know why he was being so difficult on set. I think that those moments and what Brando was trying to do with this character kind of took away from this movie a little bit, which is a shame because it's supposed to be that big punch at the end of the film that really communicates and ends this whole journey on a really satisfying note. And I think while it does do that at points, there are moments of satisfaction in here with this character, but there are just other moments where it's just a little bit more inconsistent. Now, I know I've gone on about criticisms a lot, but for the majority of this film's runtime, I was on board with calling this film a masterpiece. I thought that this film was so brilliant in its execution. I was wowed by so many sequences. And the visual storytelling and the way that Coppola approached this narrative was just brilliant. It's complex, it's exciting, while being this big epic. I really, really like films like this that are able to tackle so many things at once and make it feel so seamless, which once again, must have been really difficult to pull off because Coppola had so many doubts going into this film. But I do think he pulled it off. I do have a little bit of regret that I didn't watch the theatrical cut first, but the final cut is still excellent. There's still so many great moments in this film. There's just a couple of weaknesses that I had with the film, and then I found out were added in the final cut. So honestly, if I had watched the theatrical cut first, and we had trimmed that fat, I'd probably give this film a 5 out of 5 and call this the masterpiece. That it is rightfully, deservedly titled. It has aged so well over time. It really feels like you're in the hands of a master when watching this film. With the direction, the performances, the writing, cinematography, the sound. It's all so brilliant. But we just had a couple of moments that bogged the pacing down a little bit, took away from the message a little bit. So because of that, the score I'm going to give Apocalypse Now is a 4.5 out of 5. A really strong 4.5 out of 5. But not quite the 5 out of 5 that I was so hoping it was going to be, and it was almost there. I was ready. I was so ready. But anyway, nonetheless, this is an excellent film that is so worthy of your time and lives up to the word classic in every sense of the word. Anyway, those are my thoughts towards Apocalypse Now. Let me know what you think about this film in the comments below. I've only seen it the one time, so if you've seen it more than once, I'd love to know some of your in-depth thoughts on this film, because there's a lot here. It is a complex film, and I would really love to hear what you guys have to say. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.